Vikings, let's win this game.
Vikings fan, there's a lot happening behind the scenes that you just can't ignore. And it's not small stuff. There's a heated battle and strong statements at the most important position on the team, and that alone already changes the temperature around this season. Draft buzz is showing the Vikings are building a contingency plan for a major move, which tells you this front office may be thinking a step ahead. There's also an unexpected name emerging as an offensive piece, and that kind of development can quietly shift a roster fast. And by the end, an insider throws cold water on a popular draft theory that a lot of people were already buying into. So yeah, there's a lot to unpack here. There's something going on in this quarterback battle that, honestly, it's not just about who starts the season. It's about how far this team can actually go, and that's why this matters so much. When you look at the situation, there are three names competing, but one in particular is driving most of the expectations. And it's not by accident. Kyler Murray entered this situation carrying that fresh start pressure. Things didn't work out in Arizona the way many expected. There were injuries, ups and downs. But talent was never the issue. Now he steps into a completely different environment with Kevin O'Connell, who has already proven he can get more out of quarterbacks than most people expect. And that's where things get interesting, because there are already people out there raising the ceiling for this team if Murray takes over the offense. Chris Canty, former NFL player, didn't hold back and said the Vikings could become that surprise team nobody wants to face in the playoffs. And this isn't empty hype. When you combine a solid roster with a quarterback who can grow in the right system, things can change fast. That's how a season flips. Now here's the key point. Nobody is asking Kyler Murray to be an MVP. That's not the expectation. The read here is much simpler. The team needs someone who shows up in the right moments, someone who makes the play when it matters, someone who doesn't complicate what's already working. And that changes everything, because the defense finished last season at a level that gives confidence. So the offense doesn't need to carry the entire team. It needs to be efficient. It needs to be reliable. And Murray, even with inconsistency in his career, has already shown multiple times that he can deliver those clutch plays. But there's one detail that not enough people are really digging into: consistency. That has always been the big question. Can he sustain that level game after game? Or will it continue to be the same up and down pattern that has defined his career so far? That's the swing factor. And this is where O'Connell comes in. A lot of people believe this pairing could completely reshape Kyler Murray's career. The kind of leap we've seen other quarterbacks make in the right situation. Now let me tell you this. If it clicks, we're not just talking about fighting for a playoff spot. We're talking about the division. We're talking about a strong season. We're talking about going deep. So let me ask you, do you trust Kyler Murray to be that guy for the Vikings? Or do you still think this offense needs a different answer? Because what comes next involves the other name in this battle and raises a question that could impact the future of the entire team. Now things start to get even more complicated, because this isn't just about who wins the starting job. It's about what happens to the one who doesn't. And that brings in a name many still see as the future of the franchise: J.J. McCarthy. During this offseason, conversations started to surface. Nothing official, but that kind of background noise that never shows up out of nowhere. With Carson Wentz arriving and the possible rise of Kyler Murray, some people began floating the idea of McCarthy becoming a trade piece. And just hearing that already splits the fan base, because now you're talking about the future and the present at the same time. But when you listen to people who are actually close to the situation, the perspective shifts a bit. Chip Scoggins, who closely follows the team, basically dismissed that possibility. He doesn't see a trade happening right now. And when you really think about it, it's not a simple decision. Trading J.J. McCarthy at this point would almost be an admission that the original plan didn't work, that the draft evaluation missed. And that's not a move a coaching staff makes lightly. That kind of move sticks to you. But at the same time, the context makes things tricky. McCarthy is still young. His first year was disrupted by injury. He missed valuable reps. He was away from the rhythm of the game. And that matters a lot when you're trying to establish yourself as an NFL starter. It's not just about talent. It's about playing time, reading defenses, adjusting to the pro level. Even with all that, there are people inside the building who really believe in him. Adam Thielen recently spoke about what he saw up close. And it wasn't empty praise. He highlighted mindset, attitude, competitiveness. The kind of player where, when you're around him, you can feel something different. And that matters, because being a quarterback isn't just about arm strength. It's not just about stats. It's leadership, presence, how the team responds when you step on the field. And from everything being said, McCarthy carries that kind of energy. But here's the part no one can ignore. He knows he needs to improve. That's been made very clear. There are areas in his game that need growth, and he acknowledges that. But time doesn't wait in the NFL. So the question is out there. If Kyler Murray wins the starting job, What do the Vikings do with J.J. McCarthy? Do they keep developing him? Or do they listen if offers come in around the draft? Because one thing is certain, if a quarterback-needy team calls, this decision gets a lot harder, fast, and that kind of call can force a front office to show its hand. And what comes next starts to hint that the front office may be preparing for moves even bigger than we expected. Quick reminder, make sure to subscribe to the channel. It's free, and it helps grow this community a lot. And if you're into Vikings coverage that actually digs into what these moves could mean, you're in the right place. Now we step into a layer where things start to feel truly strategic, because this is no longer just about who plays. It's about what the team is planning to do with the entire roster. And that shows up clearly in this recent mock draft that caught attention. The first-round pick follows a pattern that's already worn people out. Dylan Thieneman, safety out of Oregon, being linked to the Vikings again. But hold on, that's not the main point here. What really raised eyebrows came after that. In the second round, the name Zion Young appears, an edge rusher from Missouri. And that's where you pause and think, wait, isn't that position already solid? And that's exactly where the deeper layer comes in. Zion Young wouldn't be a pick for immediate impact. He's not the guy who walks in and starts right away. The logic here is different. It's about the future. It's about protection. It's about preparing for something bigger. Because when you connect the dots, it starts to make sense. Andrew Van Ginkel is entering the final year of his contract. And Jonathan Greenard, who is currently a key piece of this defense, has already had his name mentioned in trade conversations before. That's not speculation. It's been out there. And it could pick up again during draft week. So let's get straight to it. If the Vikings use an early pick on an edge rusher, it's not just best player available. It's a signal that something might be in motion. And that matters because those are the kinds of draft clues that can tell you what a team is really thinking. And this is the kind of read that comes more from attentive fans than from headlines. When a team starts investing early in a position that already looks set, it usually means something is about to change. That's not coincidence. And think about it. If Jonathan Greenard is put on the market, the team needs a ready answer. You can't create that kind of hole in a defense that finished last season so strong. But there's also a risk. If the team drafts a replacement before finalizing a trade, their leverage drops. Everyone sees the move, and suddenly you lose strength at the negotiating table. So if this happens, there's a good chance conversations are already advanced behind the scenes. That's why this isn't just a mock draft talking point. So let me ask you, would you move a player like Greenard if it meant refreshing the position and thinking long term? Or do you stick with what's already working? Because the next story brings a name almost no one had on the radar, but one that could impact this offense in a very interesting way. And this is where we get into that type of player who, if it works out, changes how everyone views the draft. Because he doesn't come with hype, he doesn't come with big headlines. But when you take a closer look, it makes a lot of sense. And that name is Desmond Reed. Not many people had him on the Vikings' radar, but when you break down what he's done on the field, things shift quickly. High-level production, versatility, and most importantly, fit within Kevin O'Connell's offensive system. Desmond Reed isn't just a traditional running back. He's the kind of player you can line up in the slot, split out wide, create mismatches against linebackers, and that becomes a problem for any defense. And that's exactly the kind of piece this offense can use to become more unpredictable. That's where it gets interesting. And look at the numbers. An average of 140 scrimmage yards per game in 2024. That's real production. That shows impact. That shows that when the ball goes through him, something happens. But there's a detail that holds back the hype. Injury. His following season was shortened, and that always raises questions. Durability, consistency over a full season. And in the NFL, that matters. It can change how teams value you fast. Even so, some analysts are comparing his style to versatile players who have been with the Vikings in the past. Those players who didn't have just one role. The offense adjusted around them. And here's the part that stands out the most: value. If you find a player like this in the later rounds or even as an undrafted free agent, it changes how you build your roster. You don't need to spend a high pick on a running back. You can invest elsewhere and still add explosiveness to your offense. And that connects directly to where this team is right now. It's not just about adding stars. It's about building a smart roster, depth, pieces that fit the system. So let me ask you, would you take a chance on a player like Desmond Reed to bring that spark to this offense? Because what comes next isn't about a specific player. It's about an entire narrative that might be completely wrong, and that changes how we see the Vikings' entire draft. And now comes one of those situations that, honestly, seems small, but completely shifts how we're looking at this entire draft. Because for weeks, almost everyone has been putting the same name on the Vikings in the first round, Dylan Thieneman. It became automatic. Mock after mock, there he is. safety, the natural replacement, the easy storyline, but then someone with real insight into the team steps in, Alec Lewis, and he essentially slowed that narrative down, not with a bold headline, but with a grounded take. He said it's hard to lock that in because everything feels too convenient. Everyone sees the need, sees the player profile, and just connects the dots. But football doesn't work like that, especially when we're talking about internal decisions. And that matters, because when someone with closer access pushes back against the consensus, there's usually a reason. It doesn't mean Dylan Thieneman can't be the pick. He absolutely could be, but that's not the point here. The certainty people are pushing just isn't there. And honestly, that's refreshing, because the draft shouldn't be predictable. When it becomes too obvious, something is usually off. Either the market is oversimplifying things, or it's ignoring variables only people inside the building truly understand. That's where teams gain edges, and there's more. This constant connection to Thieneman also comes from the situation around Harrison Smith. Year after year, there's uncertainty about how long he'll keep playing, so people automatically link a replacement, but that doesn't always reflect the team's actual plan. So think about this. Maybe the Vikings are looking at something completely different from what's being projected. Maybe they're targeting other positions. Maybe they're preparing a move that hasn't surfaced yet, and that's exactly what makes this draft both risky and exciting. Because when nobody truly knows what's going to happen, any decision can surprise, and it ties everything together. The quarterback battle, possible defensive roster moves, new offensive pieces emerging, and now, a complete break from expectations around the draft direction. This isn't a team standing still. This is a team actively building, and what that means for the immediate future, that's what really matters now. When you step back and connect all of this, it's not just a series of separate stories. It's a clear picture of a team trying to reposition itself right now, without waiting for another season to pass. There's a real battle at the most important position. Kyler Murray arrives with pressure and opportunity at the same time. J.J. McCarthy is still viewed as part of the future, but already at a crossroads, and that alone affects the entire locker room. Then you add possible draft moves that suggest planning beyond the obvious. A name like Zion Young appearing as preparation for something bigger. Desmond Reed emerging as a potential spark for the offense. And this shift in expectations around Dylan Thieneman, showing that what looks certain from the outside might not be reality. This isn't stability, this is transformation. And honestly, moments like this either strengthen a team's identity or expose everything at once. That's why these next moves matter so much. So jump into the comments. Is this team being built the right way, or would you change some of these decisions? Because one thing is clear, anyone who lives and breathes Vikings football knows how to recognize when something big might be starting. Stay tuned. SKOL Vikings. Let's go.